Welcome everyone to this Let's Play of Kerbal Space Program Release 1.0. Now when you first enter the Research and Development Centre, you will land on the Technology page. This is the page that shows you the tree view and the various technology nodes that you might want to unlock in order to find a particular part that you're after. Now in this particular case, I need 90 science in order to get hold of the FTX-2 external fuel duct, the fuel line. So how on earth am I going to get 90 science when I only have 18.5? Well, the first place we can go is the Science Archive. Now this lists out all the reports that we've done and allows you to filter them based on the orbital body you're interested in and perhaps the moon that you may be interested in looking at a little more closely, shall we say. Now we've had 5 experiments, we've done 5 experiments, and they have all been done in the situation known as high in space over the Mun. So we took a crew report, we did a materials study, mystery goo observation, orbital telescope and a temperature scan. And of course we also recovered a vessel. And that doesn't count as a science experiment, but it is still a report that earned us a little science. But that's all very well. Is there an easier way to find out what science you could be doing? Because this interface, whilst being helpful, is back on Kerbin. There must be a better way. And that's where X-Science comes in. Well, we are now in the tracking station, just for a place to be, and this is where we're going to look at X-Science. I've got it using the icon in Blizzy's toolbar, but there is also a standard icon for it. So let's just open up X-Science, and X-Science is very similar to the list that we saw in the Research and Development Centre. It's just a little more convenient and a little more searchable in other scenes. Now currently I have it showing all unlocked experiments, but you could show all experiments whether you've unlocked the part or not. So I have 3,235 available experiments across my save when I've unlocked all of the technology nodes. You may have a different figure because you may have different mods installed. You can also show all experiments on the current vessel if you're flying a specific vessel, and you could show all experiments that are available at that instance on that vessel. But we're going to stay with show all unlocked experiments, and this is the list of all available experiments and also how much of those experiments we've actually done. So this is a completed experiment because we have collected 1.5 out of 1.5 total science, so it's marked in green. And if we scroll down the list, you can see others such as mystery goo. In this case right here we have got 3 out of 3.9 science for a mystery goo observation whilst landed at Kerbin's runway, which is in the Shores biome. But if we scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see this is the order in which they are sorted by total amount of science. If we were to do a material study whilst landed at Eeloo's Midlands, that one experiment would net us 480 science. Now we're not at Eeloo, and we're not likely to be at Eeloo in any soon time in this save, if that makes any sense. So instead, let's have a look at Kerbin. Kerbin is where we are, so let's type that into the Kerbin box, and there are 266 experiments which have something to do with Kerbin, and the most profitable of those is a material study, one in space high over Kerbin. So let's try in space high over Kerbin. Well, there we go. We have a total of 7 experiments. We have completed none of them, and that includes the highly profitable 48 science we can get from a material study, one in space high over Kerbin. So I think our next mission should be a mission that will take us high over Kerbin. And high over Kerbin is defined as more than 250 kilometres above the surface. So let's go and build us a vehicle that can do all of these experiments high over Kerbin. Now, if you were looking very closely, you would notice that EVA reports are one of the experiments we could do. Now, in order to do that experiment, we have to upgrade the astronaut complex so that Kerbals can perform EVAs, and that's going to cost us 75,000 funds. We have 334,000 funds, so that is funds well spent. Next, let's head into the VAB and build us our vehicle. Right, well, let's start building our craft. So we'll start off with a command pod. Now I'm using the filter extensions mod with its default configuration. It's broken down some of these categories. Just makes it a little bit easier to manage. They were getting too many parts already. So let's go into what they call general aero and get ourselves a Mark 16 parachute. We'll also use some of these radial mount parachutes. So let's get 2 of those. And the reason I want 2 is because I am going to cram on quite a lot of science. Now, I do have some storage parts for science, which is these universal storage wedges. And for those wedges, we need a universal storage spine. This is the quad core spine. So let's plug that in under there like so, and let's go and get the science modules we have. We have the Science Junior, so let's just put Science Junior there on the front. We have the orbital telescope, which we will put there, and the mystery goo container that we have there. Now there's a space here for a 4th container, and we'll use the empty science bay for that, and in there, if we open the bay doors, in there we will go and put our magnetometer. So let's squeeze that right in there. Now it's the wrong way around at the moment, so let's just flip it round and it will stick out a little bit. So let's use our offset gadget. Click on the offset gadget and just click it back one. There we go. So that should now fit in nicely. Let's close the bay doors. So those are those 4 experiments. Now we will put on the outside a thermometer. Let's put that on the outside at the front there, because at the back we will put our Kerbal engineering system. There we go, so that's our Kerbal engineering system. And this is what we are going to be bringing back. So in order to bring that back safely, let us get from general engineering the heat shield and plug the heat shield right on the bottom like so. So that should protect our craft on return. Excellent. Right, what are we going to do next? Next we need the vessel that's actually going to get us to our high in space. So let's get a stack decoupler, and then let us get something that is very similar. Alt click. There we go. Alt click and alt click, and then let's get our engine. This is very similar to one we have used already to get us out of the atmosphere. We just got a slightly different set of components. So let's get ourselves our radial decoupler. I have 2 of those. We need, where are we? Engines. We need hammer. What happened there? What on earth happened there? Let's go and get our radial decouplers. Looks like they are is that it? Floating around? We've got a radial decoupler floating around somewhere. Oh dear. It's been embedded in that. No. There it is. Right, there's our radial decoupler. So let us put our ship back together. There we go, that's much better. Right, well it would be if we had an engine on the bottom. Let's get an engine. There we go, right. Got an engine, got our hammer, and we are back where we started. There we go, much better. So let's go to General Aero and get our aerodynamic nose cone. And that is going to give us 5,500 1000 delta V, which should be okay. Now we got way too much thrust to weight ratio to start with, so let's just get this down to about 1.6. There we go, so that should give us a little bit more of a steady flight. Let us get some winglets, like so. Excellent, get us some winglets, and that gives us, we're down a little bit because it's a little bit down in weight. Now 3,400 delta V. Now I'm going to take Bob on this flight. He's a scientist, and as a scientist he will be able to get us a little bit of extra science for our money. Now, to give him a bit of help then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one of our scriptable control systems in here so that we can use our ascent script just to give him a bit of a hand on the way up. So that takes us down to 3,354 delta V. So I think that should be good enough. I don't think it will need anything else. We have our experiments, including our thermometer. We have plenty of parachutes to bring all our experiments back down to the surface. So let's head on out to the launch pad and get Bob, who should be in the pilot seat, he's our scientist, on his way high into space. Now, remember that Bob doesn't have a pilot's license, which means he's not eligible to operate the SAS, and that's why we have KOS just to give him a hand. Now, we've used our Ascend 5 script before, so let's run the Ascend 5 script again, and that should launch us into a pretty good launch trajectory on Bob's behalf. Now, I don't think Bob's too keen on automation, but we're just going to have to make do with it. Now, this script also enables automatic staging, so not only does it steer, but it will also stage in the event there is a sudden change in thrust, in other words, run out of fuel. But you'll see that the ship is beginning to wobble slightly, and this is because the SAS itself is unable to keep the ship on course, so any fluctuations tend to be overcompensated for by the Ascend 5 script and KOS, but we are still roughly going into orbit. If, of course, we had actually put the throttle up. Remember, Bob, you have to do the throttle. That's probably why he doesn't have a pilot's license. So all we now need to do is get ourselves up to an apoapsis height of 250 or more kilometers. Now, the Ascend 5 script is hard-coded to target a apoapsis of 80 kilometers, so we will allow it to control our ascent to that point, and then Bob is going to have to do the rest. So let us just watch Bob, in his rather terrified excitement, get up to that 80 kilometer point. So we're at 25 kilometers now. The pitch is currently 64 over the horizon, so you can see it arcing over as it slowly curves over. It's a controlled gravity turn, a very highly controlled gravity turn. But it does seem to do the trick. It seems to work with Release 1.0's new aerodynamic model, so let's not complain. Or at least it works for the current relatively small craft. We'll have to see how well it does with much larger craft. Now there we are at 80 kilometers. So let us lock steering to prograde. Take that one thing out of Bob's hands, and then let's get our let's get focus away from the scriptable control window and get our thrust up. So we are looking for a apoapsis height of 250 kilometers or more, which is defining high in space over Kerbin, and it is at that point we will run all the various experiments. So we're going to be pretty tight on fuel, but we should be okay. So there we go, 170 kilometers, 200 kilometers, 240, there we go, 260 kilometres, that's plenty. So we're going to 260 kilometres. I've done it again. So let's get out and into map mode. There you can see our apoapsis at 260 kilometres. This is where we're going to do our high in space over Kerbin experiments. So let us do just that. We can either use the Kerbal Alarm Clock warp to AP, or we can use the stock warp to here. So we will use the stock warp to here button just to complete this part of the ascent. There we go, closing in. We are now well above Kerbin. There we go, well above Kerbin. And we can now use Science Alert, which is reminding us there is some science we can do. And here are all our available experiments. So let's do the temperature scan. Let's just close that for a moment. Let's do the temperature scan, which is going to earn us a total of 12 science if we recover it. So let's keep that data. Let's do the orbital telescope, there we go, which is a D-Magic science part. You can just see it opening there. So that's going to give us 9 science, so let's keep that. A mystery goo observation. There is the mystery goo container, that will be 15 science, so let's keep that. And then our valuable materials study. This is the biggie. So this is the big experiment, and it's going to grant us a grand total of 37.5 science. So not quite all the science in one go, but it is still plenty. Now the magnetometer, we're going to have to manually open the doors. Where are they? We're going to have to manually open the doors for the magnetometer. Let's open the bay doors. And let's now do the magnetometer scan. There we go. Boom away. And we'll get 7.5 science for that, so let's keep that data and take the boom back in. And then let us complete this series of experiments by closing the bay doors. So let's close those doors. There we go. Let's toggle the shutter in order to retract that experiment, and finally close the bay doors on the goo. Now we can now do an EVA report. We've unlocked EVA report, so there we are. Very brave Bob doing an EVA report. Let's take that report for 8 science, and then let's get him aboard. So we are back aboard, and there are no longer any available experiments. We did dip down underneath 250 kilometres, so we just missed out on one experiment for Bob. That would have been high above Kerbin, higher in space above Kerbin. So I think it's about time we jettisoned this section. And what I'm going to do, which is some advice I have been given, is to always jettison it sideways, so you don't crash into it on the way down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the steering to retrograde, and as it turns, we run out of battery power. No, we've still got some battery power. Is it turning very slowly? I can't see. I think it's trying to turn, but I don't think it's got enough power to turn. So let's unlock the steering. Unlock steering. Steering. Close that and do it manually. Can we do it manually? It's just doing it. Here we go. Just doing it. So whilst we're sideways, we will jettison that sideways. There we go. So it's highly unlikely we will catch that on the way down. So there we go. Back onto retrograde. So let's see if we can lock the steering to retrograde now. Use the up arrow, retro. That's why. Retrograde. There we go. Lex steering. Yes, I did the same thing there, didn't I? That's why. Can't spell. Does help if you spell. There we go. If you can spell. So made the same spelling mistake there. So it does work. It weren't out of battery. We were just being an idiot. So let's close that up and fall back down to Kerbin. and see exactly how much science we actually managed to accumulate. So let's just use time warp to get to the upper atmosphere. So that's times 10. Physics aren't being applied, so we are drifting off our retrograde marker, but there we go, we're down in time warp, we're now just inside the atmosphere. Now what I'm going to do is get ready to unlock the steering so that when the time comes we can release the craft to its atmospheric destiny. So there we are, starting to hit the thickest part of the atmosphere, or the thick part of the atmosphere, as we can just see the blue colour faded in there. Plenty of atmospheric effects thundering through the atmosphere at 1,900 meters per second. Can't see any heat damage occurring just yet, but G's are rising, so Bob is getting very, very shaken. Down to 1,000 meters per second, speed dropping rapidly. Now we get into the the thickest part of the atmosphere, and this is where we can unlock the steering and where we can get ready to release the parachute. If you click on the parachute, you'll find out whether it's safe to deploy, and it is. So we can now deploy our parachutes at 6 kilometers above the we're just going to come down on the beach. Bob's going to get a chance to spend time on the beach whilst he is being recovered. So parachutes are now slowing us down, 85 meters per second there. They're not fully deployed yet. They won't be fully deployed for a few thousand meters yet. So let's just use time warp to accelerate. There we go, 4 times time warp. And just as we start getting near the coast, there we go, just as we start getting near the coast, we're going to be on a rather steep cliff face by the looks of things. Good luck, Bob. You've got 825 meters until you reach a very, very steep cliff face. So let's cross fingers, shall we? So let's go times 4 time warp. Let's hope we are going slow enough to land and rest gently on the cliff. Now our battery has been running out because our KOS system has been using up that power, just gently ticking over. We don't have any additional batteries on this particular launcher, so it will run out, but that's not a big problem. That's not a big problem because we will soon be on the surface on this rather steep slope. So let's see how we do. So let's carry on time warping until we reach the slope. This is not looking great. Cross your fingers, Bob. This is very, very steep. Electric charge is depleted, and this is going to be a bit of a roll. So we are only going 4.2 meters per second. God, we could have landed anywhere, and we're going to land here. And here we go. Oh dear. Oh dear. Now, the way it's barreling, I think we might just survive. So let's take a picture here for Gene, just to prove we did get back safely. We didn't damage the craft deliberately, and just to show Jeb that Bob can be badass too. And there we go, splashed. We even get some more science. We can do a crew report. We can do a crew report from Kerbin Shores. You see fish swimming at the window. Yes. It's only 2 science, but we will keep it. It's 2 more science than we had a second ago. I don't think we're going to manage an EVA because we have no charge to turn the craft over, and poor old Bob is face down. So let's recover the craft and see how much science we earned. Looking at the mission summary for this untitled spacecraft, we gathered a total of 91.2 science. So that's easily enough for us now to get our fuel ducts for the next episode, because we now have 109 science. We didn't retrieve that many parts, but we did retrieve all of our science parts. In other words, we retrieved all of the parts that were holding that vital science. And of course, Bob gained 1 XP for that tumble down the cliff face. Now with that said, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.